I was in love with Sophia for exactly 12 years. However, on her 21st birthday, just because I took her, who was drunk and disoriented, to a hotel and nothing happened between us that night, she hated me deeply. Even so, I still got my wish and married her. But I never expected that this was just the beginning of her revenge on me. She not only dated her first love openly but also often humiliated me. She hated me for 6 long years and took revenge on me for the same amount of time. In the end, a truck came by, and she was completely gone from my life. When I opened my eyes again, I was reborn on the day of her 21st birthday. This time, I decided to let her go and also set myself free. The story is about to begin. If you like it, remember to like and subscribe. James, come to Sophia's place. Sophia had a huge fight with her parents at the birthday party and is throwing things around right now. My mother said this in a hurry over the phone, which was a bit noisy on the other end, and then hung up. I was reborn on the day of Sophia's 21st birthday. I had been entangled with Sophia for 12 years, and after this day, she would start to hate me. But fortunately, everything hadn't started yet. I turned on my phone, scrolled through the school's communication group, found the guy Sophia had a crush on, and sent him a message. Sophia had a fight with her parents at home. Go and check on her. After sending the message, I finally let out a sigh of relief, and memories of my past life came flooding back into my mind. My mother and Sophia's mother were good friends. I was 1 year older than Sophia, and we were like childhood sweethearts who grew up together. In my past life, I also received a call from my mother and rushed over. I happened to meet Sophia, who was running out of the house. She seemed to have had some drinks, her eyes were red, and she kept shouting for me to take her home. After we got home, she asked me to stay with her for a while longer, and we drank some more together. But the alcohol was really strong that day, and we both ended up passing out after drinking just a little. However, the next day, the fact that I took her away from the birthday party and didn't come back all night was posted on the school's confession wall, and there was even a video. In the video, I was seen helping her into the elevator and then into the room, and I didn't come out again. Sophia was the school beauty, and rumors spread like wildfire. Although I asked someone to delete the post, the gossip among people couldn't be stopped. Marry me. Let's get engaged. These were the words Sophia said to me. I still remember the day she was wearing a white dress, her head bowed, and her hands clasped together when she said this. Everyone around knew that I liked Sophia, and it was natural that we got engaged. I was also very happy because of Sophia's attitude. We were going to get married, and there would be countless days ahead for us to be together. I would love and protect her and never make her sad or cry again. During those days, I thought I was the luckiest person in the world. Until at the engagement party, a somewhat familiar man walked in from the entrance of the banquet hall, and Sophia's eyes were always following him closely. After the party, I found Sophia, who was hiding in the dressing room crying. I asked, Sophia, do you have someone you like? Sophia replied, you've already got what you want. Can't I have someone I like? The way she looked at me was cold, and her tone was clearly accusing me of separating her from her lover. But in the past 3 years, I had never heard that Sophia liked anyone, let alone that she was in a relationship. Although I loved Sophia deeply, I never meant to force her to marry me. Besides, nothing really happened between us that night. I frowned and said, Sophia, if you don't want to, I'll go persuade our parents to cancel the engagement. She replied, don't be so hypocritical. Your family can decide the wedding date. Sophia gave me a glare and then got up and left. From then on, she began to hate me for the next 6 years. The phone on the table rang again, interrupting my memories. It was my mother again. She said, didn't I ask you to come? Why did that kid come instead? Now Sophia has left with him, and your aunt is so angry that she can barely stand. I sighed and said, Mom, Sophia likes him. She must want to see him at this time. My mom then asked, don't you always like? I interrupted her and said, you can't force feelings. I'll go over now. It'll be more reassuring to take Aunt to the hospital for a check-up. After hanging up the phone, I rushed to Sophia's house. This time I didn't take Sophia away, so the things that happened in the past life wouldn't happen again. And even if they did, since that man was the one she liked, it might be a win-win situation. Before I knew it, I arrived at Sophia's house. Some of the guests who came to congratulate were still there, comforting Sophia's parents. I could only compose myself, send those guests away with my mother, and then take my aunt to the nearby hospital. It was already early morning when I finally got everything settled and returned home. Rubbing my temples, I walked into my bedroom. I saw the photo album on the bookshelf at a glance. Even after so many years, I could still remember clearly that all the photos in it were related to Sophia. I opened the album, and on the first page was our first group photo. It was when I was 10 years old and first met her. We were standing under a peach blossom tree. She was looking at me with a big smile, and I was taking a petal off her hair. Below the photo, the date, time, and my childish pencil writing were there. I like you. I still remember vividly Sophia's reaction when she saw this photo album. It was the second year after we got married. She wasn't as cold-faced towards me as she was at first. We would occasionally sit on the sofa together and watch an old movie. Until she opened this photo album. With a look of disgust on her face, she said, "James, this was all premeditated by you. You're so disgusting." Sophia slammed the door and left, and our relationship dropped to freezing point again. What exactly did I do? That photo was the purest love I had for her when I was only 10 years old. What about it made her feel disgusted? Later, I finally learned that Sophia hated me because of the instigation of her beloved. But I never had another chance to explain to her, or rather, she didn't want to listen to a single word I said. I planned to propose a divorce, but at this time, Sophia's family had a problem with their capital chain. Divorcing at this time would be like kicking someone when they're down. I couldn't be such a person, and I couldn't let Sophia face the crisis alone. After helping Sophia's family through the crisis, I didn't mention divorce again because except for seeing the elders, she never came back home. We had become strangers living under the same roof. The love I had once yearned for had completely turned into a business marriage. I also thought that this was how it would be between us. To some extent, it could be considered growing old together. Until that man appeared beside Sophia again. By then, Sophia had become an important member of the Sophia family, and our relationship didn't affect our cooperation. But obviously, that man was right. Sophia still liked him. In the photos sent by my friend, the man was tidying her slightly messy hair, and she was looking up at him and smiling, just like the day I first met her. So I said to her, "Let's get a divorce. I'm tired after 6 years. Since the person Sophia likes has come back, let's fulfill her. At least one person can be happy." She asked, "What are you up to again?" The voice on the other end of the phone was as cold as ever. The two companies had a new cooperation recently, and presumably, she was worried that I wanted to break the contract by getting a divorce. I said, "It won't affect the cooperation." After thinking for a while, I added, "Let's talk about it in person when we meet." I didn't call the driver and drove to her company myself, but I never reached the destination. When the big truck crashed into me, I saw a group of children on the sidewalk. I didn't turn the steering wheel, and the car and I were smashed to pieces. "James, thank you for taking care of my parents." It was a message from Sophia. I frowned. Wasn't she supposed to be with her beloved at this time? That's right. If the incident in the past life was arranged by that man, then he definitely wouldn't jump into the pit himself. But now I was too lazy to get involved in their affairs. I exited the chat interface with Sophia and unpinned her from the top of my chat list. At this time, another message popped up. "James, I want to start a business. Do you want to come with me?" The message was from Mark, a good friend who I had played with since childhood. I was stunned for a moment before I remembered that Mark had asked me this in my past life. But at that time, I was unconscious, and then I was busy deleting the video and dealing with the rumors. Later, I was busy getting engaged to Sophia, so this matter was left unresolved. Thinking of this, I immediately replied to him, "Yes, let's go tomorrow." The other side replied, "What?" Mark on the other end of the phone obviously didn't react. I said, "Before starting a business, of course, we need to do some research. We can't just stay in this place." "What kind of business would that be?" He replied, "That makes sense. Following James, there will surely be good things." After discussing our respective ideas with Mark for a while, I planned to pack my luggage. When I stood up, the photo album on my lap fell to the ground. After thinking for a while, I threw it into the trash can next to the table. The next day, after telling my parents, I went to New York with Mark. Leaving here was for starting a business and also for leaving Sophia for a while. In this life, everything between me and Sophia stopped here. That was enough. I wouldn't pester her anymore, nor was I willing to spend more time and effort on this matter. When we arrived in New York, Mark and I found a good business opportunity soon. With the experience of my past life, I knew what could make money now. He said, "Brother, we're all set now, except for the funds." Mark scratched his head. "Do we really have to go back and ask our parents for money?" Just then, the phone rang. Mark took out his phone and said, "Hey, Sophia is calling me. She must be looking for you." He winked at me, bumped me, and then got up to answer the phone. I said, "If she asks about me, just say you don't know where I am." Mark was stunned for a moment but didn't say much and perfunctorily answered as I asked. He asked. Brother, don't you like her? Mark looked at me in confusion. I smiled and said, she has someone she likes. Do I look like someone who would separate lovers? I got up, patted Mark on the shoulder, and continued, I'm going to wash up first. Hearing me say this, Mark didn't say anything more. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw that his hand was almost pressing the phone screen hard enough to create sparks. I knew he was spreading this exciting news in the friend group. I smiled helplessly. Maybe this was for the best. I had a good dream that night, but was woken up by Mark at 7 o'clock. James, someone is willing to invest in us. The investor was Mark's classmate. We found a coffee shop and invited the person out. The other person said, my dad asked me to start a business, but I'm afraid I'll lose all our family's money. I think you guys are more reliable than me. Olivia was wearing jeans and a white short-sleeve shirt, looking like she had just gotten up and rushed over. Olivia's father doted on her. He not only treated her well but also regarded her as his heir. But now it seemed that Olivia just wanted to take it easy. Mark said, don't worry. Following James, there will be good things. Mark was smiling and handing coffee over. With Olivia's joining, we managed to solve the funding problem. Olivia said, James, the clothes you chose are too ordinary. Olivia had been giving Mark advice for a long time. After choosing the clothes, she turned to look at me. We were going to attend an industry gathering today. I looked at my clothes in the mirror. I was wearing a suit, neatly dressed, and even had a tie on. I said, I don't see any problem. She said, we three are a team, you know? Olivia threw something down from upstairs. I reached out and caught it. It was a tie in the same color system as her dress. Of course, I had no reason to refuse the request of the investor Olivia. While I was tying the tie obediently, the two of them came down from upstairs. Mark was wearing a white suit with a tie in the same color as Olivia's. The two of them looked quite match. I thought to myself. Mark said, this looks really good. We three can go be secret agents now. Mark walked up to me, raised his eyebrows, and made a gun-holding gesture. Olivia said speechlessly, you? Be a secret agent? Mark replied, what's wrong? Isn't that how it's shown on TV? Looking at Mark and Olivia bickering, I relaxed and couldn't help but raise the corners of my lips. This kind of life was also very good. Although Olivia became an investor, she still ran around with us. She was very smart. She could learn anything quickly and came up with many insightful views. This surprised me a bit. No wonder Olivia's father let her start a business on her own. With such a good mind, she could succeed in anything. This time, we attended the banquet in our own identities, not following our parents as usual. The three of us were a bit nervous. However, I never expected to see Sophia here. After all, it had been almost 20 years since I met her. I knew it was her from a figure in the distance. But the person standing next to her wasn't her beloved. Probably sensing my gaze, Sophia looked over. James. She called me, her eyes lighting up, as if a little surprised. She let go of the arm of the person she was holding, picked up her skirt, and walked towards me. This made me a little dazed. Before, Sophia always seemed like a proud princess in front of me. In the past life for so many years, it was always me who took the initiative to approach her. When she was in a good mood, she would call me James. When she was in a bad mood, she would only nod slightly to show that she saw me. It was rare to see her approaching me with a smile in her eyes like this. Sophia was about to take my arm, but I unconsciously moved slightly to the side and dodged. Her expression froze, as if she didn't expect me to treat her like this. When she looked at me again, her eyes were already red. Hi, Sophia. Mark noticed the slightly awkward atmosphere and came forward to greet Sophia. Since he and I had always been good friends, he also called her Sophia. Sophia ignored Mark and just stared at me as before. I asked, Sophia, is there something wrong? I sighed in my heart. I didn't want the atmosphere to be too stiff, so I had to ask. Hearing me speak, Sophia took a step back, creating a little distance between us. Sophia lowered her head and asked, James, can you come back and marry me? As soon as she said this, not only was I stunned, but Mark beside me also had a petrified expression. What was Sophia doing? In the past life, I was so eager to marry her, but she hated me. In this life, I was fulfilling her and her beloved, but she came to say she wanted to marry me. I asked, don't you have someone you like? I said calmly and was a little surprised to find that this time, when I heard Sophia say the word marry, my heart didn't stir at all. It seemed that I really didn't like her anymore. Sophia bit her lip and said, no, he just... Sophia stammered. Just then, a familiar voice came, have you seen my brooch? It was Olivia. She had just finished talking to two people she knew and was walking towards Mark and me. Sophia's face became a bit stiff. Her eyes moved from me to Olivia, and then from Olivia to my tie. Olivia asked, "What's wrong?" Olivia naturally saw Sophia in front of me and gave her a bright smile. I said, "She's the daughter of my mother's good friend, Sophia." I turned my head to answer Olivia's question and then added, "Did you wear a brooch when you went out?" Olivia rolled her eyes at me and reached out her hand to Sophia. She said, "Hello, Sophia. I'm Olivia, their boss." Mark said speechlessly, "Do you even know what a partner is?" Mark was complaining beside her, which made Olivia want to go over and hit him. Sophia then turned her head and saw Mark's tie. As if thinking of something, she relaxed a little. Olivia asked, "James, what's going on?" After seeing Sophia leave, Mark and Olivia walked towards me. I said, "How would I know? But you didn't wear a brooch today at all." Olivia said, "I thought you were trapped by some romantic debts, so I came to help you out." "Who knew you wouldn't follow my lead?" Olivia winked playfully. Mark replied, "What romantic debts? James has liked Sophia for years. Let me count, probably 4. Looking at Mark pretending to count on his fingers, Olivia burst out laughing. I said, "Okay, stop embarrassing yourself. There was nothing between me and Sophia before, and there won't be in the future either." I slapped Mark and then said seriously, "Don't forget the business today." Olivia said, "Well, that's Mr. Robert over there. He's a friend of my dad's. Let's go and meet him." Olivia pointed to the side. Mark and I straightened up and walked over. However, it's obvious that you can't avoid something forever. After the banquet, as soon as Mark and I dropped Olivia off, my mom called. "James, your aunt called and said Sophia has nowhere to go. Let her stay at your place for the night. Mom knows you don't want to be with Sophia anymore, but after all, I've watched Sophia grow up." Mom sighed. We grew up together, and over the years, she had already regarded Sophia as her own daughter. Although I no longer liked Sophia, I couldn't just leave her alone. I said, "Send me the location. I'll go pick her up." I had already blocked Sophia's contact information and didn't want to add her back because of this. Mark and I picked up Sophia downstairs at a hotel. She was still wearing the evening dress from the dinner. Seemingly a bit cold, she hugged her arms and rubbed them. When Mark parked the car in front of her, she didn't react at first and frowned slightly. I had to open the car door and welcome her in as usual. Sophia said, "James, why are you driving this kind of car?" There was some complaint and a bit of disdain in her tone. Mark, who had been smiling and handing her a blanket, froze for a moment, and his smile gradually faded. In my previous life, I didn't start my own business, and with Sophia always seeming willing to do anything for love, I never had the chance to find out she cared about such things. Sophia seemed to notice Mark's expression, pursed her lips, as if she wanted to say something but found it hard to speak. I couldn't help asking, "You've already arrived at the hotel. Why do you still need to go to my place?" I glanced at the hotel next to us. It seemed that Sophia's family had arranged it for her. Sophia said softly, "Before, when we went out, our two families were always together, and you were always by my side. Now, staying in a hotel alone, I'm a little scared." Sophia reached out and tugged at the corner of my clothes, shaking it gently twice, and her voice was tinged with a sob. I asked, "Then what are you doing here alone?" She replied, "I came here to find you." It seemed that Mom had still told Sophia where I was. I sighed and said, "Sophia, I know you have someone you like. Now that I'm out of the picture, you can be with him." Sophia said with red eyes, "After you left, my dad started arranging blind dates for me." Sophia's words caught me off guard. All along, Sophia had been spoiled like a little princess in her family. Why was she suddenly being made to go on blind dates? Thinking of this, I suddenly understood why Sophia had wanted to marry me as soon as she saw me today. She had regarded me as a savior. I frowned and said, "I used to like you, but that doesn't mean I'm willing to marry someone who doesn't like me." The pain of the previous life is still vivid in my mind. We were like enemies. How could I let such a thing happen again? She said, "No, James, I like you." Sophia explained in a bit of a panic. Looking at her, she didn't seem to be lying, which made me even more confused. In the previous life, Sophia liked that guy so much. How could she compromise so quickly in this life? Not only did she compromise, but she even chased after me and said she liked me. She had hated me for 6 years because of that guy in the previous life. Could it be that she was also reborn? As if guessing what I was thinking, Sophia cleared her throat and said, "I saw the photo album you made for me in the trash can." Sure enough. I relaxed a little. I said, "You should know why it was in the trash can." Sophia was wrapping herself in the blanket. When she heard my words, she froze, and big tears welled up. I handed her a few tissues and helped her cover the blanket properly. If she was also reborn, then it would be better to talk things out directly. I said, Sophia, since you know all this, you should also understand that I never forced you. Now that we have a chance to start over, don't hate me anymore, and don't regard me as a savior. Sophia was still sobbing. I was sitting right next to her, and scenes from the previous life flashed through my mind. There was Sophia coldly telling me to get out of her bedroom, Sophia hysterically asking me why I hit her beloved, Sophia's eyes never stopping on me at the engagement banquet, Sophia only calling me James when she needed my help, Sophia as a little girl saying she wanted to marry me, and Sophia smiling at me with her eyes squinted under the peach blossom tree when we first met. All of these were evidence of my 18-year-long love for Sophia, and also the 6-year-long pain that I could hardly look back on. James, you. The light from the street lamp flowed in through the car window. I couldn't see Sophia's profile clearly, but I knew she was still crying. I said, well, stop crying. I was silent for a while, then continued, let's not torture each other this time. The car had arrived. Mark coughed softly and said, then I'll go first. I said, find her a room to stay in and arrange for someone to send her back tomorrow morning. I interrupted Mark and opened the door to get out first. There was still some work for me to do today, and I had to finish it. I needed to attend a meeting tomorrow and also find a supplier. As for Sophia, if she wanted to, she could still secretly go on dates with her beloved as she did in the previous life, but this life it had nothing to do with me anymore. Sophia didn't come to find me again. Mark mentioned it once in a while, saying that Sophia was engaged to her beloved. It seemed that something had happened in the middle, but I didn't care anymore. The company was thriving recently. Although I was a bit busy, I felt very fulfilled. Mark and Olivia were always joking around, but they worked together seamlessly. Looking at the occasional pink bubbles between them, I seemed to suddenly understand something. During lunch, while Olivia was going to get food, I secretly asked Mark, do you like Olivia? That guy seemed to be choked by my words and stammered, unable to say a word. I said, come on, bro knows. I'll ask for you if there's a chance. As soon as Mark heard me say this, his ears turned red, and it was just seen by Olivia who had just come back with food. She asked, what bad thing has Mr. Mark done? His ears are so red. Usually, Mark would never admit defeat when being teased, but at this moment, he couldn't say a word and just kept lowering his head to eat. Not getting a response from him, Olivia became interested. She asked, James, what's wrong with him? I said, he's lovesick. Mark was directly choked by my words. Olivia was also surprised and quickly handed him water and patted his back. Seeing their interaction, I understood that these two were like enemies in love, and I didn't need to play matchmaker. Half a year passed in a flash, and the company gradually got on the right track. We encountered several difficulties but managed to solve them. At the celebration banquet, Mark confessed to Olivia. Usually, Mark, who always seemed casual, was holding a large bouquet of flowers, and his voice was trembling. Olivia smiled and took the flowers, then pushed his shoulder as usual, and then the two hugged. This is what love should be like, I thought to myself. Love should be like this, not like the unrequited love, mutual torture, and mutual dislike in my previous life. Now that these two were off the market, they turned their attention to me. Mark said, James, how about asking Olivia to introduce a girlfriend to you? Olivia replied, yeah, James, I have a best friend. She's smart and beautiful. Seeing that I didn't respond, Mark dragged a stool and sat next to me. Mark said, James, I don't know much about your relationship with Sophia, but people always have to look forward. Olivia chimed in, yeah, James, you can't really want to be alone forever, can you? Watching the two of them singing in unison, my heart softened a bit. Although I hadn't thought about dating again before, seeing them like this, having a lover seemed like a good thing. So I said, okay, I'll leave this to you two. I patted the shoulders of the two in front of me. Everything was different from the previous life, and I was happy every day until Sophia appeared in front of me again. Mark said, James, I met her at the company entrance. Mark looked a bit embarrassed. He went downstairs to buy the small cakes that Olivia liked and saw Sophia being stopped by the front desk downstairs. He couldn't pretend not to know her. I of course understood and motioned to him that it was okay. Mark heaved a sigh of relief, closed the office door, and walked out. Then I turned my gaze to Sophia. She was wearing a white dress, and there were some stains on her shoes. After not seeing her for a long time, she seemed to have lost some weight. When she saw me, she straightened her back slightly. She said, James, I'm sorry. After not seeing her for so long, I could guess some of the reasons for her sudden apology. She probably found out that the misunderstandings between us in the previous life were manipulated by her beloved. Perhaps before I died in the previous life, I secretly hoped that she would realize she had misunderstood me and then feel regret or guilt. But in this life, I really didn't care anymore. I rubbed my temples and said, everything I did for you before was out of my own will. Now it's all in the past. You don't need to apologize. Even if you need to apologize, it's not to the current me, but to the me who died in the previous life. Hearing me say this, Sophia covered her face with trembling hands and said in a trembling voice, it's all my fault. I just realized now that I low. At this moment, the office door was pushed open, and a female voice said, I want to eat barbecue this afternoon. Before seeing the person, I heard the voice. It was my girlfriend, Emily, and she was also Olivia's best friend. Emily was kind, lovely, and smart. More importantly, she liked me, and I liked her too. We got together after knowing each other for half a year and were like an ordinary couple, having meals and chatting together. Because of her, I realized that a good relationship can really give a person strength. I replied, okay, I know a really delicious place. I looked at Emily and couldn't help but raise the corners of my mouth. Seeing Emily's gaze turn to Sophia, I stood up, walked to her side, and introduced to Emily, this is Sophia, the daughter of my mom's good friend. I said to Sophia, this is my girlfriend, Emily. Emily said, hello. Do you want to have dinner with us later? You must be tired from coming all the way here. Sophia was taken aback for a moment and looked up at me, seemingly a bit puzzled as to how Emily knew where she came from. I smiled knowingly and looked at the girl beside me. Her eyes, like mine, were full of happy smiles. Sophia asked, can I talk to James alone for a few words? I didn't expect Sophia to say this. But I didn't think there was anything that needed to be said away from my girlfriend. So I said, whatever you want to say, just. However, the next second, Emily interrupted me with a smile, sure, I'll wait for you outside. Then she walked straight out. After she closed the door, Sophia raised her eyes to look at me. She choked and said, I love you, James. After you died in the previous life, I only then began to realize that I love you. In this life, I thought that since you didn't like me anymore, I would be with him. But the girl in front of me was crying uncontrollably. In the previous life, Sophia always had a straight face when facing me. In this life, she seemed to have endless tears. I sighed and said, don't you understand yet? You don't love me. You're just used to me being by your side, being good to you, and used to me loving you. Sophia denied it, no, it's not. I misunderstood you. Sophia, I already have someone I like, and I've experienced how happy a good relationship can make a person. You should be like me. Sophia, I also hope you'll be happy in this life. Sophia stopped talking and just sobbed softly. I handed her a few tissues and asked, do you need me to arrange someone to send you back? Sophia still didn't say anything. I said, you can rest here for a while. Someone will come to take you home later. Goodbye, Sophia. I opened the office door. Emily was sitting in Olivia's office opposite. I walked to the door of Olivia's office. Mark and her were sharing a small cake. When Emily heard the movement, she turned the chair and smiled at me. The afterglow of the setting sun drew a line on the ground. I could hold her hand by walking along the line. Emily gave me a delicate and beautiful feeling. She was a smart girl. When the setting sun fell on her face, I reached out and took her hand. Emily suddenly looked at me and asked, how did your conversation with her go? I said casually, not much. Those past events are all over. Inadvertently, many pictures flashed through my mind. Those past events were vivid, but they seemed to disappear like the blue sky in an instant. The sun set, and another gust of wind blew. When I returned to the company, the security guard on duty told me that a handsome man had come and picked Sophia up. I nodded to show I understood. That handsome man, needless to say, was David. He was a thorn between me and Sophia. The appearance of this thorn had broken the relationship between me and Sophia, the childhood sweethearts. It made the little girl who had followed me around since childhood, calling me James, hate me for 6 years. I don't know if Sophia shed a tear for me on the day I died, lying on the hospital bed. I was in a daze for a while, then came to the computer. I received an overtime task. Recently, the company has been developing rapidly, and there is a project for which we need to make a proposal. The other party was basically satisfied with the first version proposal. If this order can be finalized, our company will reach a new level. While I was busy, my phone suddenly rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was Sophia calling me. Calculating the time, Sophia should have arrived at her destination by now. I answered the phone and heard Sophia's voice on the other end, James, Her voice was a bit choked. I could feel that her mood might not be very good at the moment, but I couldn't comfort her. I asked, "You've arrived, right?" I interrupted her. She said, "I've arrived, James. I'm engaged to David. He came to pick me up this time to take me to his home," she said slowly. I said, "Well, wish you happiness." After I said this, the other side fell silent. It was a long silence between us. After about a minute, there came a sobbing sound from the other end of the phone. She was crying very sadly, but she and I had long been parallel lines, and perhaps we would never intersect again. I hung up the phone and blocked Sophia's contact information again to avoid any unnecessary contact with her and to respect my girlfriend, Emily. In my previous life, I experienced an abnormal relationship of love and marriage and deeply understood the pain it brought. So I didn't want to treat Emily unfairly. I was busy until about 3 o'clock in the morning and finally finished the planning plan. I stretched and then walked home. Now that I was working hard in New York, I had established a certain career here, and my heart had also settled down. I bought a big house and raised 2 cats in the house. One was named Tiger, and the other was named Flower. They were also childhood sweethearts and grew up in the house I bought. Tiger was the older brother, and Flower was the younger sister. They would sometimes fight, but most of the time they were happy. Most of the time when I was a child with Sophia, we were also happy. But after we got together, she hated me for 6 years. Now my relationship with Emily was more harmonious. I warmed a glass of milk for myself. After drinking it, I planned to go to sleep. The 2 cats ran towards me and rubbed my arm. After drinking the milk and simply washing up, I fell asleep deeply. Unexpectedly, the next day, I was woken up by a phone call. I looked at the caller ID and found that it was Mark calling. His tone was a bit anxious on the phone. "James, something bad happened. There was an accident." Mark's voice woke me up immediately. "What accident?" He said, "The order of our company was snatched by someone." His voice was a bit more urgent. After hearing this, I frowned slightly and said, "Snatched?" I was also a bit surprised. We had worked hard on this order for a long time. We had revised the proposal back and forth several times. And last night, I received a call from the person in charge of the other side, saying that some things still needed to be changed. I immediately responded, sent Emily back first, and then immediately devoted myself to work to modify the planning plan. I originally thought that when I woke up, I could successfully sign the order with the other side. The amount of this business was not small, divided into 3 phases, worth $15 million. If we could negotiate it, 1/3 of our company's performance target for this year would be completed. But who would have thought that it was actually snatched by someone? I reminded Mark, "Take your time. Don't be in a rush. After all, being anxious won't help in a situation like this." With my soothing words, Mark finally calmed down. "James, I don't know the exact situation yet. All I know is that a company called Blue Sky snatched our order." "Okay, I see. First, go and check the background of this company. I'll be at the company right away. Let's talk about everything when we meet." My heart was in turmoil. We had been working hard on this order for a month or 2, pouring in a great deal of effort. It's really frustrating that it was snatched away just like that. Anyone would be unhappy. "All right." Mark agreed and hung up the phone. I quickly got out of bed, washed up briefly, and rushed to the company. On the way, I murmured to myself, "Blue Sky Company. Could this company have something to do with Sophia?" When I arrived at the company, I went in quickly. Mark and Olivia were there, along with several core management members of the company. "James, you're here," Mark greeted me. "Mr. James," the others also called me one after another. Olivia nodded to me. Her slightly furrowed brows showed that this matter was quite serious. The other employees in the company also looked over. I didn't want this to affect everyone's work. I said, "Let's go to the conference room." We went to the conference room. I faced the group, and everyone's eyes fell on me. Everyone seemed to be in a rather heavy mood. Mark, being straightforward, immediately stood up and said, "James, the boss behind this Blue Sky Company is David. David is the one who's engaged to Sophia." Mark paused, looking like he wanted to say more but held back. I knew what he was going to say. He probably meant that since the company was named Blue Sky, it must have something to do with Sophia. But out of consideration for my feelings, he didn't continue. Seeing Mark struggling, I said, "Go ahead." Mark hesitated for a while after hearing me. "James, do you think this has something to do with Sophia? These days, Sophia has been coming to our company often." I replied, "Probably not. We haven't had much contact with her. Only those within our company know about this order. I haven't told anyone outside, especially not Sophia. I explained the basic situation, and their expressions changed slightly as they listened. James, but this David is really despicable. First, he took from you. He glanced at me and held back the rest of his words. Mark said to me, James, I'm sorry. I'm just disgusted by this guy's despicable and shameless behavior. I nodded, understanding what Mark said. I didn't have a good impression of David either. Mark's words might be a bit harsh, but they were mostly true. In the previous life, he used underhanded means to win Sophia's heart. In this life, he even came to snatch my business. I even suspected that he was the one who arranged the car accident I had in the previous life. Olivia gave Mark a disapproving look and said, if you can't speak properly, say less. Our top priority is to figure out how to deal with this. Over the past year or so, Olivia had experienced the ups and downs of the workplace and had become a capable professional. Mark didn't dare to say much in the face of Olivia's scolding. The other core management members of the company all lowered their heads and remained silent. The problem wasn't on our side. We had been negotiating well with the other company. After a while, seeing that no one was speaking, I said, Mr. Mark and Ms. Olivia, please stay. The rest of you can go back to your work first. The others responded and got up to leave. I turned my attention to Olivia and Mark. The three of us had put in a lot for this company. The company's current achievements were inseparable from our efforts. Now that the two of them had found their love, everything seemed to be developing in a beautiful direction. But unexpectedly, such a change occurred. I looked at Olivia and said, Olivia, you and Mark should first thoroughly investigate the situation of this order. Check if there's a mole in our company. Also, find out everything about Blue Sky Company. I'll go and meet Mr. William, the person in charge of the other company. Okay, James, Olivia said. Mark also said, don't worry, James. Leave the company matters to us. Seeing that they both agreed, I didn't waste any more words and walked out. I took out my phone and called Mr. William, but the phone rang without anyone answering. The phone could get through, but no one picked up. This situation could mean that the other side was deliberately not answering, or they might be in a meeting and didn't have their phone with them. Judging from the current situation, I thought the first possibility was more likely. The other side was probably deliberately not answering the phone. It seemed that there was little room to salvage this situation, but anyway, I still wanted to give it a try. After thinking it over, I went to the company where Mr. William was. As soon as I entered the company, I was stopped by the receptionist. The receptionist asked, "Who are you looking for?" I answered truthfully. The receptionist then asked, "Do you have an appointment in advance?" I said, "I don't have an appointment, but I have something important to talk to Mr. William about." The receptionist had a professional smile on her face and said, "Sorry, sir. Without an appointment, you can't see our Mr. William. Please make an appointment and come back." Hearing what the receptionist said, my heart sank. The efforts of our 2-month work were likely to go to waste. This was the joint effort of the whole company. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, I couldn't give up easily. I didn't enter the company but waited outside. Finally, from morning until then, I saw Mr. William, dressed in a suit, coming downstairs. He was about 40 years old, without a big beer belly, and had a pretty good figure. As soon as I saw him, I didn't hesitate and rushed over immediately. "Mr. William, can we talk?" Mr. William's eyes fell on me, and 2 people beside him quickly blocked me. I tried to squeeze through, but they blocked my way. Mr. Williams said, "Let him come over." With Mr. Williams' order, the 2 of them stopped blocking, and I came to Mr. William. "Mr. William, did you look at the planning proposal I sent you last night? Is there anything you're not satisfied with?" He said, "Overall, there aren't any major problems with your planning proposal. It's just that I can't give you this order. I'm sorry, Mr. James." His tone seemed to carry a hint of apology. I asked, "What's the reason for your refusal?" "I won't say the reason. Anyway, it's not a problem with your proposal." Mr. Williams said, looking at me. "Sorry, Mr. James. I have a dinner appointment to attend. I have to go." Mr. Williams said and strode away. I stared at his back, lost in thought for a few seconds. When I came to my senses, I knew it was no use staying here, so I left Mr. Williams' company and returned to my own. Back at the company, I called Olivia and Mark for a meeting. The meeting content was simple. I briefly told them what had happened. First, I informed them that we probably couldn't get this order. Second, our proposal was still good, and we should see if we could find a similar company to cooperate with, so as not to waste everyone's efforts. Mark said after listening, "Okay, James." Olivia didn't have any objections either. She said, "I'll go and make arrangements." After Olivia left, Mark said to me, "James, I know why our order was snatched." Mark looked serious. I looked at him in confusion. "Why?" He said, "I just had someone thoroughly investigate David. This guy has no money at home. The reason he can open this company is that Sophia's family invested in it. I guess he got this order through Sophia's family connections." Mark paused for a few seconds, looking at me, as if he wanted to say something but was hesitant. I couldn't help but say, "Mark, since when did you become so hesitant? Just say what you want to say." Mark said, "This matter still has something to do with Sophia. Do you think she might, out of love turning to hate, deliberately take revenge on you?" I glanced at Mark. My relationship with Sophia was not that simple. We were both reborn. I knew her past, and she knew mine. In the previous life, we got married, but in this life, we were neither lovers nor husband and wife, and we were back to the state of first acquaintance. Now, I didn't want to have too much to do with Sophia and didn't want to repeat the past. But Sophia took the initiative to get close to me in this life, which I couldn't understand. Shouldn't she hate me? She hated me in the previous life. Why did she suddenly want to get close to me in this life? I was full of doubts and didn't understand her purpose. I said, "Probably not. This might be David's doing. I remember Sophia has never been interested in business. She likes to do what she likes." When Mark heard me mention David, he became even more furious. He gritted his teeth and said, "It's really this bastard. I'll go deal with him right now." Mark said and was about to walk out. I stopped him and said, "Going to find him now won't help. The top priority is to keep looking for cooperation partners." Mark nodded, knowing that what I said made sense, but still said harshly, "Our company has a feud with David now." I agreed. Indeed, the feud had been there since the previous life. David was a despicable and shameless person. I sat in my office, started looking up information, and searched for relevant partners to see if there was a chance to find a new cooperation opportunity. Sometime later, the phone on my desk rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was an unknown number. Usually, I don't answer such harassing calls, but unexpectedly, the other side was persistent and called 3 or 4 times in a row. Helplessly, I pressed the answer button. After answering the phone, I didn't speak first and waited for a while. After about 3 to 5 seconds, a deep voice came from the other end. "Is that James?" "Yeah, it's me," I replied in a deep voice. "I'm David. I'm glad to talk to you for the first time." His tone was clearly full of provocation when he said this. I was slightly startled. After regaining my composure, I said, "What do you want?" "Nothing special. I just want to tell you that I'm engaged to Sophia. She's my fiancée now. I hope you can keep your distance from my fiancée." I slightly frowned, feeling a bit annoyed. What annoyed me wasn't that he asked me to keep my distance from Sophia, but his commanding and threatening tone. I said coldly, "Your business has nothing to do with me. I'm not interested in her affairs. I don't need your reminder." He replied, "That's for the best. If you don't listen to me, you'll know the consequences. Consider this as a warning. If there's a next time, it won't be so easy." His voice turned gloomy. I asked, "Aren't you ashamed of snatching this order by despicable means?" He said, "Anyway, winning is all that matters. I've said what I needed to say. You'd better watch out." Then he hung up the phone. I stood there, lost in thought for a few seconds. I became more and more suspicious that the car accident in the previous life was his doing. Of course, I had no evidence now. It was all just speculation. After thinking about it, I made a call, planning to find someone to conduct an in-depth investigation of David. Although I had asked Mark to check before, what he found was too superficial. I explained the matter to the person on the other end, and they said it was no problem, adding that they could do anything as long as the money was in place. I acknowledged and told him to get the results as soon as possible. He said he could finish it within a week. After hanging up the phone, I felt a bit heavy-hearted. If David really did things without scruples, then Sophia would be in danger by his side. Maybe I should remind her, but then again, I thought it wasn't necessary. In the afternoon, Emily called me, asking me out for dinner and saying she was waiting for me downstairs at the company. I agreed and said I'd come down right away. When I saw Emily, her long hair was flowing, and she was wearing a floral dress with a big smile on her face. Her skin was fair and delicate, and she looked like a gentle and charming woman from the south of the Yangtze River described in books. "I'm here, James," she waved to me. I ran towards her. She asked me with a smile, "What do you want to eat today?" "It's my treat." "If it's your treat, I'll eat anything." We went to a restaurant. Emily had a smile on her face the whole time. Seeing her so happy, I couldn't help asking, Emily, did something happy happen to you today? Yeah, I'm happy just seeing you. Emily's answer surprised me a bit, and I felt warm inside. After she ordered the dishes, she handed me the menu and asked me what I wanted to eat. Looking at the menu, I found that she had ordered all the dishes I liked. I took the menu and ordered a few dishes she liked, saying, I'm happy to see you too. Great, huh? She laughed. I heard from Olivia that you're in some trouble. Do you need my help? I'm ready to step in at any time. She waved her pink little fist. I waved my hand and said, it's not time for you to step in yet. At this moment, the phone on the table suddenly rang. I looked at the caller ID. It was another unknown number. I thought it was David calling again and was about to hang up, but Emily suddenly said, answer it. I looked at her. She was resting her chin on her hand, looking at me with curiosity. After hesitating for a moment, I pressed the answer button and turned on the speaker. As soon as I answered, to my surprise, Sophia's voice came from the other end, James, it's me. You blocked my contact, so I had to use another number. I frowned slightly. What's up? Emily then made a gesture to me. She used 2 fingers on her hand, pretending they were legs walking. I knew what she meant. She probably wanted to leave to give us some private space. But I quickly shook my head and said, you don't need to leave, Emily. Just as I finished speaking, Sophia's voice came again, is she with you? I said indifferently, yeah, I'm having dinner with Emily. I naturally wouldn't hide my relationship with Emily. I didn't want to experience an unhealthy way of loving again. Emily, hearing my words, greeted Sophia generously, hello, Sophia. On the other end of the phone, Sophia was silent for a minute or two before saying, James, I'm calling you just to tell you that the matter of your company has nothing to do with me. It's all David's doing. Okay, I know, I said expressionlessly. If there's nothing else, I'll continue having dinner with Emily. She said, James. I took a deep breath and said, if there's nothing else, let's end it here. The other side was silent again. After the silence, she said, I have nothing else to say. I'll hang up. After hanging up the phone, Emily looked at me and said, James, you were really cold just now. I stared at her and said, I'm cold to other women, but I'm passionate about you. Emily suddenly said I was cheesy and that it made her blush. After dinner, Emily said to me, if you need money, just tell me. I have $10 million in my account. If it's not enough, I'll ask my dad for it. I knew her family was well off. After all, Olivia's family was not poor, so her best friend's family must also be in a good condition. Although I didn't need her money at the moment, hearing her say this made me feel extremely satisfied. I said, I don't need the money for now. In a few days, can I visit your parents? She asked, you want to meet my parents? A blush appeared on Emily's face. It's so sudden. I'm not ready yet. I asked, don't you want me to meet your parents? She quickly replied, no, it's not that. I'll call my parents right now. The blush on her face became more obvious. I was just about to say there was no need to be in such a hurry, but Emily didn't give me a chance. She immediately dialed her mom's phone. As soon as the phone was connected, Emily said, Mom, I have something very important to tell you. Emily's mom's voice came from the other end, what is it, Emily? Your future son-in-law said he wants to come to our house to meet you and Dad. Emily said, winking at me playfully. I was made nervous by her. Really? When? Emily's mom seemed to be in a good mood. Seeing this, I knew I had to greet her. Auntie, hello. I'm James. James, you're there? Emily's mom seemed surprised. I replied, yes, Auntie. Emily and I are having dinner outside. We were just talking about having the opportunity to visit you and Uncle. I wonder when you two are available. Any time is fine. Tomorrow would work too, Emily's mom said. James, I've been hearing Olivia and Emily constantly praising you. I'm really curious to see what my son-in-law looks like. Emily's mom was clearly very happy. Seeing how easy-going her mom was, my initially nervous heart relaxed a bit. I said, okay, then I'll come to your place in the next couple of days. The other side replied, great. Then Emily's dad and I will get prepared. Let us know before you come. Sure. Emily's mom quickly said to her, Emily, when you're with James, don't bully him, you hear? Got it, Mom. How could I bully your future son-in-law? Emily stuck out her tongue, looking really cute. The mother-daughter pair said a few more words and then hung up the phone. Emily stared at me and said, look at my mom. She's so warm and attentive to you even before meeting you. I smiled and said, isn't that a good thing? After dinner, Emily and I took a stroll around the neighborhood. Maybe she thought I was in a bad mood, so she soon took me to a nearby arcade. These were the games we used to play when we were kids, but they could still help us relax. At around 9:30 p.m., I sent her home. About 3 days later, I found a potential partner who was willing to talk to us. This company was much more powerful than Mr. Williams' company. Moreover, they said that if our proposal could satisfy them, they were willing to offer a 30% premium. That meant an order originally worth $50 million could instantly increase to over $60 million. I told the company employees this news, and everyone was extremely excited. I took the initiative again and, after a week of hard work, revised the plan several times based on the original one and finally finalized the ultimate version. We signed a contract with this company and secured the order. Everyone was very happy, so I gave the employees 2 days off and also distributed bonuses. Mark said to me, "James, this is a case of a blessing in disguise, isn't it?" I responded with a nod. After 2 days of rest, we really got back into the busy routine. The next day, I received a call from the investigator. He said the files had been sent to me. I said okay and paid the remaining balance. When I got the files and opened them, it was information about David. I read it carefully and found that David was a man who climbed up the social ladder by relying on women. He had previously squandered the money of other women, even causing someone to commit suicide by jumping into the river. His original name wasn't David, it was Michael. My face changed slightly upon seeing this information. It was truly unexpected. This guy had deceived at least 10 women before. Now that he was getting close to Sophia, he must have some ulterior motives. I initially wanted to immediately warn Sophia, but then I thought that Sophia, like me, was reborn. She should be on guard, right? After all, she had also been reborn and must have gone through some things, perhaps related to David. About a month later, we completed the first phase order for the other party. They were quite satisfied with our efficiency and quality and said that after this project was completed, they would give us all their future orders. We were all very happy. About a week later, I received a call from Mr. William. When I saw Mr. William's number, I hesitated for a few seconds but still pressed the answer button. "Mr. William, how come you have time to call me today?" "Mr. James, sigh, this is a tough situation for me. I gave the order to the other party last time, but they simply couldn't handle it. Now I'm in a dilemma." "It's really difficult," Mr. William said, looking embarrassed. I said to Mr. William, you're so capable. How could they not handle it? Here's the thing, Mr. James. I'll give the order back to you. You make a plan for me, and I have absolutely no objections. I'll even give you a 10% premium," he said earnestly. I thought about it and agreed. After all, it's easy money, and it would be foolish to turn it down. I called Olivia and Mark for an impromptu meeting. Mark said angrily after hearing this guy wants to come back now? We shouldn't cooperate with them. Olivia gave him a glare and said, why not cooperate when there's money to be made? I agreed with Olivia and said, yes, everyone has been working hard these days. Let's quickly finish Mr. Williams' order. Everyone responded and left the conference room one after another. On the same day, David called me again. As soon as I answered, he started yelling, James, what do you mean? Snatching the order from me. I said, no special meaning. It's all about competing by our own abilities. Fine, you wait. I'll make you pay the price. David threatened me, and I was very annoyed by his words. Michael! I shouted these 3 words. He was clearly stunned for a few seconds, looking a bit confused. Who's Michael? Who are you talking to? I'm David. There was a hint of confusion and anger in his tone. I coldly replied, all right, Mr. David. You'd better watch out. Then I hung up the phone. To my surprise, an accident almost happened right after this call. That day, when I was driving home from work, a car suddenly rushed out and crashed towards me. Fortunately, I reacted quickly and managed to avoid it. After this thrilling experience, I became even more aware that David was an extremely dangerous person. After thinking it over, I sent the information about David to Sophia. As for what she would do, that was up to her. I thought she should also hate David. After doing this, I couldn't help but sigh in relief. Now the company is developing rapidly, and everything is going smoothly. I met Emily's parents, and they were very satisfied with me. Especially Emily's mom, who was extremely warm to me. She would often invite me to her home when she had time. After going there a few times, she asked me when I was going to get engaged to Emily. I said without hesitation, any time. I quickly told my parents about this, and they were very happy. Although my mom felt a bit regretful that I wasn't with Sophia, since Sophia was the daughter-in-law she had recognized since I was a child, when she actually met Emily, she quickly took a liking to her and even urged me to get engaged to Emily soon. Both sets of parents agreed, and we loved each other deeply. It was truly a case of everything coming together perfectly. All the conditions for happiness were met. We chose an auspicious day, and about a week later, Emily and I got engaged. The engagement day was very lively. Olivia and Mark, the matchmakers, were naturally present. After the engagement ceremony, I was exhausted and went home to have a good rest. The next morning, I saw a piece of news about David. He was arrested on suspicion of fraud and intentional injury. He also became a hot topic because he had deceived more than a dozen girls, and everyone despised him. At the same time, I received a call from Sophia. She said on the phone, "James, thank you for helping me." I said, "I'm not really helping you. Consider it helping myself. I think David is really disgusting. Although I can't prove that he was behind the car accident that killed me in the previous life, I can tell from some clues that he does things without scruples. After all, I almost had another car accident recently." Sophia was silent for a while and then said, "Anyway, I still need to thank you. I also know that David is not a good person." I responded with a hum and suddenly didn't know what to say. After another period of silence, she continued, "James, congratulations on your engagement." I replied, "Thank you for your blessing." She then said, "I'm going to study abroad soon. I plan to learn something. If I develop well there, I might not come back." Her voice seemed to have a slight tremor. Anyway, my past with her had become history. We seemed to have completely become strangers. I said, "Well, I wish you all the best and hope you'll be happy." Then I hung up the phone. About a month later, Olivia and Mark held their wedding. Emily and I attended as the best man and bridesmaid. During this wedding, I could truly feel that they understood and loved each other deeply. I envied them and, of course, was glad that I had Emily by my side. I held her hand, looked into her eyes, and thought to myself that I would definitely be happy with her forever. Sophia's side story. This is a special bonus for channel members. Remember to like and show your support. After James called, I started cleaning up my office and the adjacent lounge. When I'm not at home, I basically live in the company, but I don't want him to know. After all, he has been so outstanding since we were kids, and so many things have happened between us. My self-esteem constantly reminds me that I can't back down or admit defeat. Although I was a bit puzzled as to why he suddenly proposed divorce, I still felt a slight sense of relief. Maybe we were really a couple destined to have a troubled relationship. We hadn't had a peaceful life for so many years, and perhaps separating now was a good thing. But when it actually came to the point of separation, the anger and resentment in my heart disappeared, leaving only an indescribable sense of loss. I picked up the photo of the two of us on the table and was about to put it in the drawer when the police called. "Hello, are you a family member of James? Please come to the Central Hospital." At that moment, time seemed to stop suddenly. When I came to my senses again, I was already in the car on the way to the hospital. In fact, later on, I could hardly recall what I was feeling at that time. I only remembered that I didn't shed a single tear. It wasn't until I came back from the hospital, back to our shared home, that, almost unconsciously, I walked into his study. The photo album on the bookshelf was placed at the bottom, but I still saw it at a glance. I remembered that the last time I saw this photo album, I had a big fight with him. And this time, when I saw the album, he was no longer in this world. I took a deep breath and opened the album. The first page was a photo of the two of us when we first met. We were still young in the photo. The sun was shining brightly that day. James's eyes were slightly lowered, and his eyelashes cast a shadow on his face. It was such a beautiful time. Yes, James and I weren't always like how we ended up. We grew up together. He was my best friend, like an older brother to me. He was very skillful. When we went on a picnic, he would make a beautiful flower wreath for me, put it on my head, and call me little princess. He was excellent at his studies, especially in math. Countless afternoons, he would explain problems to me over and over again in the yard, never thinking I was stupid or showing any impatience. His cooking was great. He could make delicious dishes like red braised pork and stir-fried pig intestine, which I loved. He would flick my forehead with his bent index finger, but it didn't hurt at all. He would take me to the amusement park and cover my eyes when we entered the haunted house. When I quarreled with my parents, he would take me away. I knew about his pressure and responsibilities, and he understood my pride and sensitivity. We truly understood each other. Later, I was admitted to the university where he was. On the day he helped me choose an apartment, I was still full of anticipation for the upcoming 4-year college life. However, I met another boy named David. He said he liked me and took me to the beach on his motorcycle. The speed was very fast, and my heart was pounding. He asked me if I liked him too. Feeling my heart pounding in my chest, I was a bit confused. Before that, I had always thought I liked James, so I told David the truth. David said to me, "What you feel for him is probably just dependence. You've always called him brother. Affection is not the same as love." Maybe he was right. I might have just mistaken dependence for love. That evening, David and I sat by the beach. The waves were crashing against the rocks at our feet. He kissed the back of my hand, and I didn't resist. Later, I introduced David to my parents. After that, James and I got drunk, and he slept at my place. Then, the surveillance video of the elevator in our apartment spread throughout the school. I didn't understand why he did this. David reminded me, "He might want to be with you." I could hardly believe it. We had known each other for so long, and I knew James wasn't that kind of person. But indeed, James and I went back to my home that day, and only I, David, and James knew the location of our apartment. My father said on the phone, "If you marry James, our current crisis can be resolved." I vaguely understood the truth. First, I was attacked by public opinion on the internet and among people around me, and then I was pressured by the survival of the company. Overnight, James seemed to have changed completely. I didn't understand why this was happening, but I was also a member of the family. Even if it was a marriage of convenience, it was my duty. So I still went to James. After all, he was James. We grew up together, and he wouldn't treat me badly. He had never treated me badly before. "Marry me. Let's get engaged," I said to James. He seemed very happy, and for some reason, I was also in a good mood. Maybe it was because no one was gossiping about me anymore. The next time I saw David was at my engagement party. On the day I decided to go to James, I broke up with him. He was very sad, but he said he understood my difficulties and agreed. Looking at his unshaven face, I knew he might be more heartbroken than he showed. And how could I be at ease getting engaged to someone else in this situation? But James actually told me he wanted to cancel the engagement at this time. I was immediately furious, or rather, enraged. He was the one who had gone to great lengths to force me into this situation, and now he was pretending to be a good person. Thinking about him and then looking at David, who was sitting in the corner drinking alone, I stormed out. In fact, after getting married to James, we got along quite well. He was still the same as before, not good at sweet talk, but he did everything a husband should do, as if those things that hurt me before hadn't been done by him. Sometimes, I would even unconsciously forget about that incident, and our relationship became much more harmonious. It wasn't until I met David again during a business event. He nervously pulled me to sit down, and I saw that video again. So everything went back to square one. At that time, I also thought that since we were already married, James didn't need to release the video anymore. But looking at David's bleeding mouth, I couldn't say anything. I had always felt nothing but guilt towards David. The James in my impression wouldn't do such underhanded things, but he did. The James in my impression wouldn't hit people, but he did. I no longer believed anything he said and no longer went home, retreating into my shell like a snail. It wasn't until James died in a car accident. The police said he was trying to avoid a group of children. I knew he was a very kind person, but he had also deeply hurt me and another person who loved me. Coming back to my senses, the photo album was still lying quietly on the table. The young us in the photo were still smiling happily. A drop of water fell, smudging the childish words "I like you" written in pencil. I quickly reached out to wipe the water stain, and then, belatedly, touched my face. Only then did I realize that I had unknowingly burst into tears. Later, I had an accident and was reborn. I initially thought it was an accident, but then I found out that it was all part of David's plan. It turned out that he had never really liked me, he only cared about my family background. I deeply regretted hurting James, who loved me the most. Because of David, I had hated James for 6 whole years. So when I was reborn, the first thing I wanted to do was find James, my James. I wanted to start over with him. But it was too late. He already had a girl he liked. That girl was very nice, beautiful, and gentle. He started to distance himself from me. I knew I had hurt him too deeply, so I didn't blame him. But then David came to approach me again. I hated him and wanted to take revenge on him. I prepared a series of plans to make him fall into the abyss. During this period, my plan almost got discovered by him. Several times, I thought I wouldn't succeed and couldn't get my revenge. But in the end, James came forward and gave me a piece of information. I finally got my revenge. After getting revenge, I planned to go abroad to live. There was nothing left for me to cherish in my home country. Coincidentally, I also got an opportunity to further my studies. Leaving my home country, I knew I would never have any more contact with James in this lifetime, but I would still sincerely wish him happiness forever in my heart.